Hey guys, today I have with me the founder of PulseChain Name Service, and we're going to discuss a bit about what this service is and why this community could be interested in it. So, to get started, could you explain what ENS is, or in this case, PNS is?
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I think within the Hexagon and Pulsagon community, ENS or domain names haven't been that predominant. However, I think for any ecosystem to flourish, especially with PulseChain coming out, I think that's like one part of the tool set that we need to have once we launch, and that's where we're here. Just to give you kind of like an overview of what ENS is, and then also PNS or penis or however people want to call it, because I've heard so many jokes around that already. So ENS is the Ethereum name service. So people are familiar with .eth addresses. They launched, I think, in 2019, 2018, as kind of like a decentralized naming service. I think over the past years, we've seen, that being more and more used in dApps, as well as identities that people associate themselves with. And then also, there's this gigantic other side, which is kind of like the aftermarket, speculation on top of that, right? So, which kind of like we're not too big of a fans of. We essentially really want to double down on the utility, having a decentralized profile for yourself, and then also make it a little bit easier to read, your name whenever you send and receive transactions, or if you essentially are like logging into an app, so you essentially always know what your profile is. So that's kind of like our approach, and we want to essentially support the PulseChain ecosystem on the domain name, in the domain name space.
I really love that, and I love how quick and efficient you guys are. PulseChain isn't even out yet, and you're already trying to bring this name service. So I think that is super awesome and super good with the initiative. So thank you.
Yeah.
Can you explain to everybody how the name service actually works?
Yeah, exactly. So it's very similar to ENS. We are a hard fork of ENS, and the reason is because if you look into the Web3 space, you have a couple of domain name providers like Unstoppable Domains. You have ENS, you have Hashgraph, and everyone is using slightly a different approach. Some of them are a little bit more centralized. Some of them are fully decentralized, and ENS kind of like encompasses both of the best, or like best of both worlds, where the main usability pretty much is, seeing your name, seeing your screen name, tracking it, and so on. And I want to really, like illustrate that. Domain names don't solve world hunger. They don't clean oceans. They don't do, like all of the big stuff that people think. It just solves one very specific problem, which is ultimately having a digital identity, which in this case, can be a real one, can be also your synonym that you use online, and then also helping you, navigate the crypto space, where you don't need to, memorize, long addresses and so on. And then so the way ENS usually works, and then also PNS is, there it is a smart contract that essentially keeps records of all addresses as well as names, and you could essentially mint your own name with that particular contract at a yearly fee. And in this case, your name will be maintained there. So it's very similar to the DNS service, like the domain namespace, like that we know in Web 2, like the .coms and .orgs and so on, where there's one centralized entity holding it and can essentially shut down your website or your name in particular. However, with us, we cannot shut down, we cannot change your name, we cannot modify any attributes on it. It's all like once you mint your domain name and you update your profile and do whatever you want with it, we cannot take it back. We cannot not change anything. It's like locked on the blockchain. In this case, hopefully the PulseChain blockchain soon, once it's on mainnet.
Well, I do think it solves the problem because simplicity with addresses is going to be something that can help onboarding, because obviously you can't remember all those characters to your wallet address and your public address. So essentially, if I'm out in the public and I want somebody to reimburse me or make a transaction or pay me for something, I can just say KatieeP crypto.pls. So
Yep.
I like the simplistic version of what these name services actually bring for crypto.
Yeah, and the thing is like it's a very basic feature, right? It's not like anything fancy. It's very basic feature of
Yeah.
having the right address, and it's why I'm saying it's like we're not solving world hunger or anything. We just want to make sure that people, whenever they transact on the blockchain, make less mistakes by recognizing their own addresses and their own names associated with the addresses. Yeah.
So you said you're a hard fork of ENS. Is there any additional features or variations that you're going to be making?
Yeah, so we'll have a series of changes that we're making on the front end, especially on the entire experience. But let's face it, I mean, if you're minting your own domain name and you want to update certain attributes, it's really cumbersome currently doing it. So we essentially want to make a lot of changes on the front end, which we've done, that you can essentially already check out on our website, app.pulse.domains. But then also when it comes to the contract has been audited multiple times by the ENS team. And from a security standpoint, we think they're great. We will be adding some additional features when it comes to allowing additional records being added. And I'll expand on that in a second. But when it comes to like the changes that we're making, we are very, very careful to the changes that we're making. And we'll also have our changes audited as well, just to ensure that, that contract is fully, secure, clean, and essentially, can provide a cornerstone for the PulseChain ecosystem.
Yes. So is your service going to be fully audited and open source like ENS?
Yeah, so it will be audited. Our smart contracts will be public and open source for people to play around with, or to to see that we are transparent, and can also compare and contrast all of the changes that are done. We also have a series of developer documentation for other builders in the ecosystem to integrate PNS into their platforms and apps and so on. And especially in the first 6 to 12 months, I think we will be very active in helping other founders in this space, kind of like craft the user experience that is in par with other services, but ideally a little bit beyond.
So you mentioned a profile manager. How does the PNS domain manager work?
Yeah, so right now, if you currently have so currently updating records, and when I say records, I'm saying like you want to include additional information that is tied towards your profile, maybe a profile image, maybe a description about what you do, maybe your Twitter handle, maybe a decentralized website that is associated with your domain name. Right now, it takes like 20 transactions, literally 20 transactions to make all of the changes. We're combining all of that into one. So for instance, if you essentially go to our websites and you mint your first domain, you could essentially make all of the changes that you want, and with a single transaction, write those changes into the blockchain. And going back to like a previous question that you mentioned, what are some additional features that we are planning to include? And we want to include some additional records that you can write. So for instance, we have a very thriving community that are individuals like you that do interviews, that have their social following, and we want to essentially one part of the equation is to allow you to have some sort of link tree where you have all of your socials, your Twitter, your YouTube, your TikTok, and so on, in one profile written on the blockchain, and then also allowing you to receive tips, for all of the free work that you do, because you're not getting paid by anyone, and we all know that, right? That the community has like at least a very simple way to to say thank you to your work. Yeah.
I like that, decentralizing and monetization.
Yeah, I mean, like we all know that, right? And I've been in the community like before even like during Bitcoin Hex days, right? And like one of the reasons why Hex is now bigger and bigger is because of individuals like you that, take out their time and stream and talk and have the conversation online. And I know in the early days there were like, a handful of people doing that. I usually am the person that just like lurks around and follows and just like there. But heads up to you guys for doing that and leading the charge and having also a conversation online, which many don't have. But I can guarantee you, and especially every time I go to like in-person events, there's so many people that are Hexicans that don't have a face online or not even a Twitter profile and so on, but they're all Hexicans. And I love that, right? So it's like, you guys are kind of like the tip of the iceberg of like, representing us and representing the community, and you all do it for free. Just double, like I want to really hammer that down. Every Hexican that I have ever met never got paid by anyone, right?
Well, that's what's great about the community. And even the lurkers or just people that hang around on Twitter, everybody in the community plays a vital role, whether it's somebody that streams or just somebody that likes a comment or likes posts. Every part is vital, because even likes on Twitter actually push us out into the algorithm. So without everybody coming together as a collective, which is all for free, we wouldn't be able to keep pushing out as much as we do.
That's very true. So, very, very true.
Bringing up the community though, one thing that you do see with ENS names is people kind of front run people to buy their name and then sell them back to them. Are you guys having a phase or a way to put aside some names for some people so that doesn't happen?
And I think that's, thank you so much for bringing this up, right? So our goal is a fair distribution of domain names, and we want to reduce cyber squatting as much as possible. And just for everyone that is not familiar with the term cyber squatting, it essentially means like, just because you were early, you sniped you purchased a domain name, and now you're trying to sell it for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50x or whatever it is, right? And we really want to reduce that. So if you go to our website on pulse.domain/claim, you could essentially claim your domain for free. There are a couple of requirements. So for instance, if you are a builder or a project on PulseChain, you can essentially submit the claim. You're going to get your domain name for free. And we will, in this case, ensure that you receive that through like a verification process that is, in the description there. For anyone that is on Twitter and is a predominant, and quote unquote predominant, I mean, it sounds a little silly, but for anyone that is a Twitter personality, within the Hex, within the PulseChain, but as well as, any other community, they can also claim their name fully for free on pulse.domain/claim. Feel free to read the entire the entire paragraph around that. So in order to do that, you essentially have to submit a form. We're not asking for PII, for nothing, right? For personal identifiable information. We just want to make sure that you were claiming your name. And then also, once PulseChain launches, we will essentially look at the entire list and then ask you, it's like, okay, what's the address you want to receive it in? And we're going to do that over Twitter. And then before, asking for your address, we'll be also providing some documentation on how to treat privacy in Web3. So we're not just going to ask you for like an address where you have, all of your hex stakes, for instance. We're like, no. It's like, start with a clean address where we can send that domain to, and we'll send you some PLS as well, so you can essentially modify, and update your profile, upload your, whatever image you want, or attach an NFT to it, a website and so on. And you can do it all, without intermingling that address with anything else. Yeah.
That's awesome. And you just answered one of my questions. I was going to ask what you were doing with privacy when it comes to that, like encouraging people to definitely get a secondary wallet. Or if it's a public figure, like somebody that's very predominant in the community, to not utilize their main wallets if they want to have a wallet with their address for monetization purposes.
It's a really good point, and we have that, and we'll have that in our documentation on how to preserve your privacy online, and especially in Web3. So we'll be releasing our documentation in the next couple of days and so on, so for everyone. But I think the biggest thing is like there's not much knowledge around that. So for instance, with .eth addresses. Everyone puts them in their Twitter handle, but not many individuals, especially in the early days, realize that that becomes something very, very trackable, right? And we want to make sure that the entire PulseChain and the PulseChain community knows about that and knows the pros and cons, and then also offer some steps or recommendations on how to essentially go about preserving your privacy on Web3.
That's awesome. And again, that's another service that you guys don't have to provide, but you are. So shows that you really are here for the community.
Let's think about that, right? And I thought I've spent a little bit time thinking about like, why is the Hexagon community the way they are in the PulseChain community, as well as projects that you essentially see on PulseChain and so on, right? And it all kind of like goes back to one individual that instilled some very core principles, and I think we all try to appeal to that as much as possible, with being transparent, with saving individuals, with educating individuals, and I think Richard Hart set the standard that we all are following. Would love to kind of like exceed even on that, right? But he definitely set a really, really high bar.
I definitely have to agree with that. And the Hex community is special because there truly is so much education within our community about so many different topics, and you just don't see it in other communities.
I mean, I'm heavily biased, but I think the Hexagon community is probably one of the smartest when it comes to Web3 and understanding and playing around with like truly decentralized products. And so, but again, I'm biased, but I've seen other communities as well. But so far, the Hexagons, PulseChains rock.
I mean, I'm biased too, but it is facts. So your contract that holds the addresses that it gets routed to with the PNS names, how secure is that from people's public addresses being tracked? Oh, sorry, what's the vulnerabilities in that contract?
Oh yeah, so we like any good project, we're pretty much standing on the shoulders of giants. So for instance, Uniswap was I think a gigantic revolution, especially for individuals that played around with Ether Delta, which was a horrible experience, right? After Uniswap, we saw a lot of people forking it and building on top of it, right? So like the core work has been, done, and it has been battle tested over time. I mean, like PulseX is, PulseX, the exchange, is a fork of Uniswap v2 and potentially in the future v3, right? But in many instances, if there's technology that works and has been battle tested, you want to essentially start with that rather than building things, from scratch and trying to reinvent the wheel, right? And we see it also. We see it also within the PulseChain community. A lot of builders are building on top of forks rather than building it from the ground up, right? Here we're talking about Aave forks or GMX forks and so on, right? And I think it's like, it's not necessarily a negative thing. I think it's like a good thing. If there's something that worked, has been battle tested, you want to essentially start with that and ensure that any changes that you make are also audited on top of that as well. Yeah.
I definitely have to agree. Ground up builds are very intricate, especially when it comes to the accounting and the contract logic. That is no small feat.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, even for us, right? Like, what's the worst case scenario? Oh, the worst case scenario, you lose your domain name that you bought for $5, right? Which is like not pleasant. We definitely want to make sure that that's avoided as much as possible with additional audits and so on. But then there's like contracts that hold millions and millions of dollars, where people essentially provide liquidity and so on. And it's like, if that fails, you didn't lose $5, you probably lost your entire position, right? So we want to kind of like and I think a lot of people in the PulseChain community stand on the shoulders of giants and then innovate on top of that, and we want to follow that path as well, or have been.
So you brought up fees. So can I touch base on that? What is the fee for actually creating a PNS name? Is there a different fee for set characters or?
Yeah. So you could your PNS, the domain name could be actually as long as you wish. You can also include emojis, Arabic characters as well. So in this case,
Nice.
we'll are very, very close to the ENS naming convention. And yeah, so there, like, also all of the domain names are in lowercase, just to mitigate, the I's and the L's that people might use to scam and so on. And so yeah, so that naming convention and that naming convention standard is not perfect. I'm not saying that, there are some edge cases. However, for the majority, it seems to work, and we want to go with that as well, rather than reinventing the wheel.
So you said it can be as many characters as you want. Does that mean the lower character names would actually be more expensive because they're more rare?
Yep.
Or
Yeah, so we looked at the pricing model, and we've played around with like what makes the most sense, right? It's like what's, because there are some naming providers that essentially, you pay once and you have the domain name for free forever. Then you essentially have the yearly renewals that essentially are happening. ENS is going after that. We also have yearly renewals, so that's kind of like the model, or the subscription model, you could say. And then when it comes to the length, you also see in this case, longer names are cheaper than shorter names, right? And the dynamic there is you want to make sure that domain names are accessible to anyone at a very, very reasonable rate at $5. And this is essentially like the lowest rate that we have. If you have a name that is 5 plus more characters, you essentially paying $5 a year just for that, right? And this is ultimately, it's like, that utility might be worthwhile, might be worth $5 a year. I think that seems like a good deal, right? A lot of name services adopted similar pricing, where it's like really, really low entry price. So now we're talking about the higher prices, right? If you want to be a little bit more fancy, or you want to use, domain names as a way to speculate, right? So for instance, if you have a domain name that is 4 characters, the price is $169 a year. And then if you have a domain name that is 3 characters, it is 555. Not 5,055, but but or 5,555, but 555. So 555. And the rationale and the rationale there is essentially, we see similar pricing models done with other domain name providers, where the shorter ones are used more as a branding thing, or more as like a coolness factor, or as a speculative way to double, triple, quadruple your money. And we want to essentially recognize that, and in that case, increase the price for that. In addition to that, is if you have like a 3-letter domain name, there are just not many out there that essentially allow you to do three names, so it becomes kind of a little bit more scarce, right? And then also one other dynamic, that we've seen, right? It's like, as a domain name provider, especially on the upside, especially on the speculative upside, you're not benefiting that much, right? If we look at ENS names that, let's say a 3-letter domain name that was purchased for like $600 and sold for 20, 30, 40, 50K, that's essentially all the secondary market benefiting from that, right? And this is just the nature of, of markets generally, right? And we recognize that, and to us it's like totally fine. That's the nature. We don't want to fight it. We can't. It's just like the natural market playing out.
Well, I really like that dynamic, and I think PulseChain is obviously going to be massive. Not being biased or anything, just I do. So I actually see a secondary market for these types of names, especially the 3-letter ones. And I really like that you're doing 3 character, because again, it is a form of a rarity, or a form of scarcity, as you're calling it.
Yep.
And I think that's super cool, because I really do see a secondary market for it. You already see a secondary market for the .eth address names. So I kind of like that. I like it a lot.
Yep.
So what's the... Well, yeah, go.
Yeah, and some of the things that were, again, I don't want to promise anything, right? Because it's like, well, the thing is, we're currently out on beta. It's done. There were never any promises, and we actually, became public 3-4 days ago. Before that, we were just building, before that, we were just like building quietly in the background because, similar to Richard, he essentially published his thing. Well, he talked about this, but he essentially published complete or built Hex complete. And, with us, we would like to do a similar effort where we're like, hey, we're not going to, raise any money or, try to promise anything. We essentially want to, put out a finished product. In this case, it's in beta, right? Because it's still up for modification, but we want to essentially put out a product that people can look at and then talk about this, right? And I think now, and that's pretty much the reason why we just appeared like 3-4 days on Twitter and talking about domain names and so on.
Well, I caught you guys straight away because I was super excited. This is something that I was actually waiting for, and when I seen it, I was like, "No, wait."
yeah, I noticed that, right? And it's like even like in the months before that, I noticed the .pls and yep, I know in their Twitter handles, and I'm like, well, it makes sense to have that for us. We need that because ENS will not support PulseChain. ENS has not supported any other chain other than Ethereum. And they're not supporting ETHW and ETHF, right? So we want to essentially support the PulseChain ecosystem and offer the same and even more functionalities in that case.
I changed my Twitter name and I was sitting there going, I'm really waiting for this and I can't wait for somebody in the community to pop up with it. And then like a few months later you did and I was like, yes.
Your prayers have been heard.
So what's the renewal process like? Is there a grace period in between?
Yeah, good question. So when it comes to renewals, you can renew like when you mint your domain name, you could essentially do it, mint it for 1 year or even like 10 years or whatever, how many years you want. If your domain name is about to expire, there's a period where your domain name is priced really, really high. So in this case, your domain, let's say you have a 3-letter domain name, right? And you, for some reason, forgot to renew it. Instead of like, and let's say that domain name, in the imaginary world is now worth $10,000, right? We're not gonna, so it's like, we're not going to sell it back for like $500 because in this case, or $555 for anyone to snipe it. And there will definitely be bots around that. But we use a very similar approach that used by other domain name services, where for a period of 30 days, they start with a crazy price. So in this case, in our case, it will be $100K for a domain name. And then every day it decreases all the way down to its original price, right? So in this case, if you have people that are like, oh, I'm trying to, snipe that name, I want that name, we essentially let the market decide on what day individuals want to essentially purchase it, right? And then in this case, it starts at 100K and goes all the way down to 555. Yeah.
Nice. I really like that implementation.
Cool. Yeah, and then if you are the owner and you're like, oh my god, I don't want it. Well, let's say if you lost your keys, or not keys, that's not, but like if you don't have access to your address, someone else can essentially jump in and renew your subscription for you, right? So any other address can increase or renew other addresses for other individuals. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So with the PNS names, are they going to allow to point to a website? So like with ENS names, if there's a website that's hosted in an IPF server, their names can point to it. Will your service allow for that?
Yes. We'll cover all of the IPFS providers, or a decentralized service providers that allow you to store your data decentrally, well, like in a decentralized manner. So IPFS, and then there's like Hive, and there are a couple of providers. So yes, that will be possible. Yes, that will be in place. And then when it comes to profile images, where all of your data is basically being taken away, that's kind of like not taken away, but summarized. we will essentially allow you to have your own profile where you essentially, like, I'm just using your example, right? Where you have maybe KatieeP.pls.fyi, and that will essentially be one profile that shows your profile image, your NFT collections, all of your addresses, all of your decentralized websites that you have connected to it, and also will allow you to share that profile easily with others, right? So that's kind of like that universal Web 2 front end that will aggregate all of the data and allow individuals to check it out and then go to an IPFS website or go back to your social or give you a little tip or, do all of the things. Yeah.
Awesome. And in that profile manager, are you able to transfer your .pls name to a different address?
Yeah, so currently, you could essentially transfer your domain name, or you could also create subdomains and transfer them too, right? So, for instance, let's say you have a fan club, right, and you own KatieeP.pls, and then you essentially can can create as many subdomains as you want for yourself, and then send them over to all of your fans to have their own profile, right? And essentially you're essentially the owner of your top level domain, and all of the subdomains are essentially tied to you, but you cannot edit them. So in this case, you could essentially give them away to others and they can create their own profile. Yeah.
Awesome. Is there a bit of a latency period with PNS names? Because obviously a transaction has to route through your service first.
Oh my God. If you haven't played around with it, PulseChain is really fast and it's really snappy. And once you connect to PulseChain V2B and you're on our app, play around with it and see how fast it is. You are like buying a domain name quickly. You're updating information really quickly. So the transactions that we're currently seeing, it's like 1 or 2 or 3 seconds. They're like really, really snappy and it feels good. It's like a really nice light app that is snappy, and I love that. Yeah.
You're gonna have a massive leg up on ENS names. That's awesome. Will you guys stop at just .pls, or will you actually look at making .hex and .pulsex as well?
Yeah, I think if you look at the traditional DNS market, right? I mean, like with .coms, .net, .org, and so on, right? And I think for PulseChain, just to reduce confusion, I think it will be wise just to start with one. Maybe in the future we'll start, including additional ones if that is a user request, right? And here we essentially, when I say user request, we want to really make sure that we're part of the community and serving the community with our service, that we essentially listen to the feedback, and maybe 3 years from now, everyone wants a .hex domain. People are like screaming. It's like, of course we're going to do that, right? But as of now, the plan is to start with .pls names and see essentially, or ensure that perfectly works, that has been adopted, and then from there, if people want to .hex or anyone other name, we're totally open to that. Yeah.
I just love that you're so here for the community and you're here to interact and be a part of the community and do things for us. I think that's so awesome.
Well, the thing is this, right? It's if you think about that, right? It's like we all are really hyped up about PulseChain, right? And in order to ensure and contribute to the success of PulseChain, we want to ensure that we have the tools and the user experiences that make it a really pleasant experience and safe experiences, not only for us, but for any other individuals that are new to the ecosystem, right? So we need to have a base layer of tooling and experiences that just like make interacting with Web3 and the blockchain as simple as possible, right? And there's still so much more to do in regards to that. But I mean, like, the guys from Staker app, I've they released some screenshots of their beta, right? And it looks really nice, right? It's like in many instances, people don't really, see that they're interacting with a blockchain or, doing the stakes and so on. But I think the user experience, and also the security needs to be as simple as possible, and they're doing a great job in that regard, right? And just Web3 in its whole just needs to continue doing that, and we want to make sure that we're doing our part for the PulseChain ecosystem.
I really think name services do a massive part for onboarding, and I just don't think we've really seen it in Web3 yet, because again, we're in a society where people are simplistic and a little bit, they only want to do things if it's easy. So a name service really intertwines Web3 with society, the ability to easily remember an address versus a string of characters.
Yep.
I think it helps a lot for onboarding in the future.
I mean, it's, I keep going back, and I don't want to sound negative in this case, right? When I say it's like we're not cleaning up oceans and all of that, right? We really want to make it as simple as possible for individuals to use the blockchain, right? The same reason why DNS existed, right? Like the .coms and .nets. It's like because people didn't like to type in an IP address into their browser, right? So it needs to be human readable, right? Same with us. We want to make sure that users have an easier time interacting with the blockchain, with dApps, and with sending and receiving payments.
And I wouldn't go so far as to say our community aren't doing things to clean the ocean, because when PulseChain launches, you never know what we're all going to end up doing.
Oh, well, which is another thing that I noticed, right? I don't want to go on a side tangent, right? But a lot of people that started with hacks that I've noticed, right? And we're benefiting from price going up to the right all the time. You essentially see them having more free time and start volunteering, right? Giving their time away, printing posters, giving stickers out, and so on. They're not getting paid. They just got to a point where they have now more free time and are financially secure because of their crypto decisions, and now essentially are paid by themselves and just do all of that just because of their purity of their heart, right? And I love that. I really love seeing that.
I do too. I think it's absolutely awesome. And I really biased again, but I don't think there is a stronger community than the Hex community. I mean, we've been sitting in over a year long bear now, and the community is still thriving, and they're just not slowing down. They're still going and building and going out and putting stickers on things. So I think our community is special.
I totally agree too. And during the next bull market, we'll probably be also one of the richest communities. which is good and bad, right? Has its pros and cons, but I think continuing to promote like longevity, or like working on yourself, or now starting to work out, or spending I don't know $5,000 $10,000 on yourself, treating maybe doing a procedure where you increase your lifespan, all good things, right? Because you become a better human being, and then with the wealth you can touch others and help them along the journey. So it's good.
Very much so. So do you want to touch base just on people that want to go play with your testnet right now, just to recreate a brand new, create a brand new wallet address before they go play on the testnet?
Oh yeah. So right now on testnet, the best way to go about this, if you just have a testnet wallet, you could essentially go on it. If you have like one pulse in your testnet wallet, you can do that. If you don't care about privacy, you can definitely do that. One thing we recommend is, and we'll be publishing more documentation around that, is to essentially create a brand new wallet. That is free, by the way. You can create as many addresses, right? An address is like one address within your wallet, but you could essentially create a net new address. You can go to pulsechain.com. There's a link to the faucet. And then on that faucet, you get 10 PLS, which is testnet pulse, and you can interact with our app. You can update your name. You could, include an IPFS website. You could create subdomains. You can create as many domains right now on testnet as you want. By the way, a couple of days ago, I noticed some interesting behavior where there was like a couple individuals just minting a ton of names. I think that individual like minted like what 60, 70 different domains, right? And I'm like, hey, just FYI, they will not be transferred to mainnet. It's just testnet, just to test out. So don't think you could like like resell them or anything. It's just testnet. They're worthless. There's like, it's the point is testing. Testnet Pulse is also worthless right now, so it's all for testing purposes. Yeah, but just for anyone that is curious, you could either the thing that we recommend, start with a net new address, get some testnet PulseChain in there, and then buy as many domain names, update your profile, subdomains, send them to other addresses that if you like, and play around, and share your feedback in our Telegram group, which is t.me/pulse domains. Yeah.
I'll leave that link below so
Awesome.
people can jump on in and ask any questions that they like.
Awesome.
So I think that brings me to the end of all my questions. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Yeah. So as we discussed, we're currently on testnet. We will also be on version 3 of the testnet whenever that comes out. And then also right now we're totally open to feedback, to feature requests, to what you would like to see. This is again just like the beta, and we will be expanding on that. So if you have feedback on like, hey, I would love to do this with the domain name or that, or I would love to, I don't know, include a video somewhere, maybe, I don't know, but it's like any request that you currently have, we are really, really happy to hear that, and we would love to hear that. So feel free to do that either on Telegram or send us a DM on Twitter. But essentially, this is the time to gather as much as feedback as possible. And then also for anyone that is currently a builder within the PulseChain or even like the Hex ecosystem, you can get your name for free. We will be reserving that. And then essentially once PulseChain mainnet launches, we'll essentially verify it and then essentially send it to you. So make sure you claim your domain name. Again, it's pulse.domain/claim. Very, very important. Share that also with other people that either are building or have a large internet, like 5,000 followers on Twitter or YouTube. Please share that with them, because we want to make sure that we can guarantee a fair distribution, and that individuals that want to Pulse domains with their name, that they are guaranteed to get that, right? And again, we put out 5,000 followers on either YouTube or Twitter as like an arbitrary number. But again, it's like if you have like 3,000 or 4,000, we will be looking at that entire list once PulseChain is out, and then we'll be evaluating. There's maybe some room, maybe we'll reduce that number to 3,000 and so on. It's like just submit it, so we essentially have that list, so we can ensure. I mean, like there are some predominant individuals in Hex and PulseChain that are very well known, but they have like 1,000 followers, right? So would it be fair to grant that name to them? I think it would, right? And we want to really, like, the point here is to ensure that it's fairly done, and that people get their domain name that they represent online or through their project.
I love it. It's a really community orientated service. It's awesome. And full disclosure, it's definitely something that I've been waiting for, and I will definitely be making my own PNS name.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave the link to the Telegram group below, guys. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming on.